Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, today, the 9th of September, we're going to start with our first web conference of the course International Business Management. My name is Angela Piedad Suarez Torres. I'm the course director. I'm professional on international relations from Universidad del Rosario, specialized on European studies from the same university, and I have a master's degree in international politics from Newcastle University in the UK. In this period, we're going to have a course tutor, a teacher that is going to be working with most of the groups that we have in the course. So is Professor Javier Gerardo Vivas Prieto. Professor, could you please make the presentation and welcome to the course.
Okay, thank you, Professor, and welcome, students. My name is Javier Vivas. As you mentioned before, I'm currently living in Ibagué, Tolima. I'm a bachelor in international business management, and I have further studies in marketing, a master's degree in development, and I'm currently studying my PhD in education.
Thank you very much, Professor Javier, and welcome to this course. Thank you for attending the web conference, which is very important. We have some students today, and welcome to everyone. This class, the web conference, as you know, is a real class, the synchronic moment that we have with the students and the director of the course. And in this case, thank you for the tutor to be joining because it's very important to have the collaboration of everyone in here. Our class plan for today, after the presentation, we're going to talk about internationalization opportunities and processes, company internationalization, the role of diplomacy, and challenges in internationalization. At the end, we're going to have a feedback. It's more like, as I told you, a normal class. If you have any questions, if you want to share any experience that you have or any idea, you're all welcome. Just raise your hand and I'm going to give you the word. So first of all, we're going to talk about what we understand about internationalization opportunities, which is really important in today's business landscape. So when we talk about internationalization opportunities, is the opportunities that we have for our companies or the companies that we work with to take them to the international market. So the first idea that we have is expanding to new markets. It depends on the direction that we have from the company. Not all the companies and not all the products are designed to go to the international market. It depends on the quality of product that we have or the service. If we see that it may have like the trend to be the international market, some products we have just designed for local markets or regional markets. So if we want to expand to new markets, we need to know really well the type of product or service that we have. If we have a really high quality, if we think or we consider that our product or service has like the international standards, because sometimes we consider that our product is really, really good. But when we go to the new markets, to the international markets, we see that maybe the competition is very high. The standard of quality is going to be really high compared with the one that we have in our product. So we have to analyze different elements to decide that we're going to expand our production, our marketing, our distribution from the product or service that we have to international markets. International opportunities also means accessing to new customer bases. It's one element that we have to consider in a very important way, because of course, when we have our product or service offered just for the local market or the regional market, we just know, or we just have an idea of the profile that we have in our customers. So we know what the local customer, the regional customer has, the needs that they have, the type of products or services that they're looking for. But when we try to go to an international market, we need to learn about the profile of those consumers, because that's going to change. It changes in different ways because the cultures, the beliefs, the trends change. Even if we are in a globalized world, the needs are going to change depending the country that we're thinking. And of course, what the people, the tastes that they have, the type of products that they're looking for. So to access to a new market is also to access to a new customer base that we have to do a very deep research to be able to be there. And this third element is also important regarding the two first elements, is that we have to diversify the risk. So when we think about taking a product to the market and we're thinking to take it out of our country somewhere else, we have to understand and to be sure that we're going to face different risks. Not the same that we may be facing in our country, but we're going to face different risks in different levels. Not only about the consumer, but maybe about the economy, about the logistics, and different elements regarding the culture. So it's going to be very different. So we don't have to look only just for the market, the type of market that we want to go to, the type of profile of the consumer, because it's going to be different. And of course, we're going to face different risks. But at the same time that we have to look for different elements that are going to become challenges for our job, we also face some opportunities. Opportunities like emerging markets, digital globalization, strategic partnerships, and innovation. What's the meaning of that? Of course, if we go to a different country, to a different region in the world, we're going to face and we're going to find different economies, some small economies, some really big economies, like the main economies in the world, maybe China, India, European countries, maybe the United States. And also we're going to find some emerging markets. And those emerging markets offer different opportunities for us. Sometimes we consider that we go to a traditional international market, maybe because we see that the market in the United States is very big, that there is a lot of consumers. So we consider that is an opportunity. Maybe if it's a typical Colombian product and we think we're going to consider to take this product to the Colombian or Latin people in the United States. So we're going to face a kind of familiar market because we consider and we think that that we know or we have a barely knowledge about the profile of those consumers. Also, we consider a common market maybe the European countries, but there are also those emerging markets, those are emerging economies, countries that maybe before we didn't have any idea of their economies. And today they are like opportunities, they show opportunities to our products or services. And we have to consider them because sometimes we have more opportunities in those countries, in those markets. Maybe we can consider some other markets in Latin America or some markets probably in Africa, we don't know. Maybe the lack of knowledge that we have from those communities and those countries and those populations make us to have doubts about taking those risks or those opportunities, or in sometimes those are potential opportunities that we can have in different parts of the world. So it's important not just to consider the big markets that we traditionally know, but also the emerging markets. Another one that is growing really fast might be China, or in general, the eastern countries of the world, because those are emerging economies, emerging markets, and of course, with millions of potential customers that we may have. It depends, of course, as I was telling you before, about the profile that we have of our product or service according to the needs of those markets. Digital globalization is one of the elements that is very important today. Of course, more today after the pandemic of COVID-19, because it's an opportunity that has growth. Before, maybe we have more face-to-face processes of negotiation. Maybe we needed to touch, to see the products, to take them to a fair, an international place, an international fair. And after the COVID, we've seen that the globalization brought us into this digital world. So now we have the chance, and so many people don't need to have a physical place to sell things, to sell products, but just on internet. You can use it with social networks, and you can make use of this digital globalization to promote and to do the marketing on your products or services, and to have customers not only around you, but maybe in some other regions and in some other parts of the world. So a lot of companies, small, medium, and big companies, they had to face this challenge from the moment that we had to be all in our homes, that the streets were closed for us, and the markets and the malls were closed. And so we have to find out how were we going to buy our basic things to survive, and also to buy another things. So the digital globalization was developed really fast, and today we have different tools to access to the market, and we don't need the physical places where to offer the products or the services, and we just go through the digital promotion of our products. So it's very important to consider that today, because with the time we have new access to new tools, new elements that this digital globalization offers to the companies, and also to the people who works in international business as mediums on these processes. The strategic partnerships. When we talk about internationalization opportunities, we don't have to think only about that I'm going to take this product, which I make in my company, and to take it physically somewhere else to sell it. No, sometimes it's just to think about that I'm not going to go through the whole process. I'm not going to be the same who produces the element, but also the one who sells it. No, you can have strategic partnerships. Maybe if you process your products here in your country, and the workforce is really high, and you can find places where you can just make the production and make it cheaper, and then export it somewhere else. And then you don't have to do it everything in your own country or by yourself. So you can find strategic partners with those that you can work with, and you're going to get a lower risk of the process, and you're going to have like different elements in the chain to get to the final consumer. So you can consider those strategic partnerships to internationalize your product, but you don't need to do the whole process and to go through all the stages to get to the final consumer. And the last one, but is not the least important, innovation. Innovation, it doesn't mean that the product that you have or the service that you offer is going to be completely different from those from the market. No. Innovation means that If you have a real profile of that consumer that you have, that customer that you have, then you're going to offer your product or your service with a very important element that makes you different, and maybe that answers to the needs that the consumer has in the market that you're looking for to get into. So innovation might refer to a basic change, but on the product or their service that makes it different and more attractive. So innovation goes in different elements. Maybe innovation is not only in the product or service as it is, but maybe in the marketing, in the strategic partnerships that you can make, in the way that you get into the new market, in the way that you get to the new customer. So there are different elements that you have to consider that innovation is involved in this process. Do you have any doubt, any trouble about what I'm talking about until now? Well, you're very quiet. I hope that you're understanding what I'm saying. I'll try to speak not that fast. That's a challenge for me. In this process of internationalization, of course, we're going to have different factors that are going to be influencing the process of internationalization. First of all, we have the market trends. So when we talk about market trends, we consider the growth in consumer demand and technological advancements, for example. So the growth in international demand, it means that when we're looking for a different market that we're going to, an international market, we have to look at the profile, as I was telling you, at the profile of the consumer. We need to know if there is a trend to continue with the demand or that is a positive trend to growth. Because if we see like there is no growth and maybe there are different products that are replacing the type of product that we're going to offer, we have to analyze very well the potential that we have to get into that market. Because if it's going to be really difficult to stay and maybe the competition is very high and there are some other alternatives, we have to consider if really we have to try to get into that market or if we have to try somewhere else. Because we're not going just to make the whole exercise to get into new markets and then to face that the growth is going to be negative and that we're going to lose all the time and all the money and all the knowledge that we have about that market. So those are elements that we have to consider. When we think about internationalizations, there are many elements that we have to consider, to know, to learn about, because sometimes if we just focus on one element, maybe we're leaving behind some other important tools and characteristics that are going to be very important in the definition of the success or the failure of the process of internationalization or the opportunity that we're trying to take in or to go through. So it is very important for us to have in mind the different elements to consider to go into this into a new market and international environment. Technological advancements. Sometimes our countries, we don't have the best development of technology, not only in the type of product, but maybe in the process. And then it has a very direct influence on the cost of production. So about analyzing the costs, we have to be very careful because we don't know at the beginning how is going to be the competition according to the cost of production and the utility that we're going to have, regardless the competition that we have. So we have to be very clear about what is our elements of technology that we use in our process, and the whole technological element that regards the whole process of our production, the development that we have in technology, for example, talking about marketing processes, how we get to the consumer. So we have to be aware what's the type of technological advancement that we have, and what's the type of technological advancement that the competition has, and of course that the market where we go has. Because maybe in our world, in our region, in our local market, we are very up to date in technology. But if we go to a similar market, but somewhere else in the world, maybe we'll find that they have difference in the technological advance that they use in different elements, not only in the production of the product, but maybe in other elements, and that we're going to have like less points to compete in this market. So those elements, we have to be aware of them when we're thinking about those internationalization opportunities. In industry factors, sector-specific dynamics and competitive landscape, is not just about, for example, the type of product that we have, but also the industry and the environment that is related with the product that we are offering, or the service that we want to go through the process of internationalization. So of course, we need to learn about the industry. So if I work, for example, with leather, I need to know maybe the conditions and the regulations that the different markets have about the raw materials that I'm going to use, maybe the low force and the regulations about the type of low force that I have. Sometimes, for example, if we go to the primary sector here in Colombia, and we think that we have delicious vegetables, very clean production maybe, and we think, oh yeah, why don't we try, maybe because the national market is really stretched, maybe the selling prices are very low, and the utility that we have is like very tight, so we should try to go maybe to the American market. And when we think that our product compare, because I look, for example, for broccoli here, Colombian broccoli, and I compare with the broccoli in the United States, maybe I think, no, but it looks fresh, fresh here, and the other one doesn't look that fresh. Maybe the quality that I see is better here in Colombia than in the United States. So in these basic elements, I may consider that I can take the Colombian production to the American market. But when we go to look through the tiny elements of the industry and maybe the regulations of the industry in the United States regarding the production of broccoli, it's going to be very hard compared with the one that we have here in Colombia. So for example, if I want to export broccolis from Colombia to the United States, there are so many regulations about the labor force and, for example, the water that we're going to use in the production, the quality of the water, the conditions of the labor work. There is no possibility to have involved children in this process. So we're going to find so many troubles that we're going to see, okay, it's quite difficult, and it's going to improve the cost of production if I'm going to adapt all those regulations here in Colombia to be able to export. So if I have to improve those elements regarding only, for example, the labor force regulation here in Colombia compared with the regulation in the United States, and the requirements that they ask me as Colombia to export this product to the United States, if I'm going to implement and to do all the things that they're asking for, I have to consider that that's going to improve the cost of production. If that increases, then the cost to be sold there is going to be higher. So I have to look if at the end of the exercise, I'm going to be competitive or not. Even if my product is going to look fresher, but I have to consider also the process of logistics, the type of boxes where I have to put those broccolis to get fresh in the United States. So there are so many elements that we have to consider about the industry that sometimes we don't look in a fast way to look the competition. So those industry factors sometimes are very important and related to regulations that if we ignore them, probably we're going to fail in this opportunity that we have, that we could consider for our product or service. Regulatory environment related to the industry factors is what I was talking about, policies that facilitates or hinder international expansion. Then we have to look at this regulatory environment in different types. For example, the raw materials that I use in the process of production of this element. So we have to look if those raw materials that I use are allowed in the country where I want to put my product. Sometimes there are tiny elements like the elements of the paint. If it's a product for children, there are some regulations in the European market where some types of paintings for elements used by children are not allowed because they might be dangerous. So there are some elements on the regulatory environment that we have to look on the small little sentences because those are going to mean some challenges and in some point, some troubles for us to get into the new market. So that's why those policies are going to facilitate to help us, or they're going to stop the whole process that we have. Sometimes those regulations are a way to make a filter to get so many products into the market. It's like a protection that they have, like type of protection for the markets. And of course, those always are related with the health of the people who is going to use the service or the product and the impact on the environment. Also, for example, in the case, for example, of vegetables, some illness of the land and some bacteria and some elements that they're going to be exposed in a different environment, and maybe they will cause some troubles in the environment, in the people. So those are elements that we don't just have to look at them like no, they just want to stop importing products from Latin America because we have X or A or Y element. No, it's because they try to protect their market from different elements, from different elements that can represent some risk. So we have to be aware of that. It's not just because they want to and they don't want to get our products there. No, it goes further than that. In this internationalization process, we're going to find some stages. For example, we have to, as I was telling you, there is not only the exporting possibility that we're going to have. When we talk about internationalization, it's not going to just not exporting a product. We can establish a foreign subsidiary. We can consider joint ventures, and of course, a strategic alliance. Those are different options that we have. And how are we going to consider this? It depends also on the type of risk that we consider we're going to be able to face. The option that has the highest risk is going to be exporting. Why? Because when you export, you're going to be yourself in the whole process. And sometimes if you want to be not just exporting, but maybe being the one in the process of selling the product in the other country, you're going just further than you're just exporting. So the risk that you're going to face is higher. The second is to establish a foreign subsidiary. Then you have to know a lot of things about the regulations on the foreign country and the type of negotiation that you can have with a partner and how are you going to manage that. Joint ventures and strategic alliance, also you have to know a lot about the partners that you can have and how the policies work. And you really need a very important law advice because sometimes we trust, sometimes we can see that things look like quite familiar or maybe that we can manage them, but every country is like a different world and people think different and culture is different and the value of the word is different, the value of the written contract is different. So we really need to know so many things about the process of negotiation, the process of the internationalization, the conditions that we're going to have, the risks that we're going to face, and the opportunities also that we're going to have. So those options that we have of internationalization, we have to analyze what type of risk are we able to take and how well prepared we think we are or we can become to take one of those options. There are some models of internationalization, and one of them is the one that we're working on in this activity that starts the 2nd of September, and is talking about Uppsala model. The Uppsala model was developed by the Swedish researchers Johansson and Van in the 70s and explains how firms gradually increase their international involvement. It suggests that the companies often start with limited internationalization and progressively they're going to expand their opportunities, their operations as they gain experience and knowledge. So this is like a process that they go not in a very fast way. They go very like step by step in the way that they are learning and they know more about the market. They are increasing the presence in the market. So where they're going to increase the size of the operation. So they're not just going straightforward to the opportunity, that they just go through the knowledge stages and increasing the operation. The key elements of this Uppsala model, first of all, is the incremental steps. So they begin with exporting, which involves lower risk and commitment. As they gain experience, they may move to more committed forms like joint ventures or the wholly owned subsidiaries. The market, the market knowledge in this model emphasizes the importance of acquiring market knowledge. The companies learn about the foreign markets gradually, and this knowledge reduces uncertainty and risks. So the main element of this Uppsala model is the knowledge on the new market. And in every step, they're getting more knowledge. They're trying like new opportunities. So they try to face lower risks. Physics distance. The concept of physics distance refers to the perceived differences between the home country and the target country, cultural, economic, and legal. The firms are more likely to enter markets that are similar to their home market due to the lower perceived risk. So it's normal. If we don't want to face a very high risk, we go step by step and we try to find new markets that we consider that are more familiar or more related to those that we already know. We're not going to find a very different market that is going to take us a lot of time to get known and to know more about them and to be able to establish a business or a process of internationalization. So they start with more familiar markets to make it easier and to have a lower risk to face. And the learning process, of course, the process of internationalization is seen by the Uppsala model as a learning process. Then the firms are going to gain knowledge about the country, to get experience and knowledge about through the experience. And this informs their future international. So this knowledge is going to build the experience. And of course, with that experience, they're going to design the internationalization strategies that they're going to develop. So it's just a process of knowledge and to face lower risk. What's the implications? The Uppsala model suggests that the firms will typically internationalize in a gradual and systemic way, with a focus on learning from each step to build their capabilities and confidence. The second model that we're going to consider is born global firms. The companies that internationalize rapidly from inception, rapid internationalization in today's interconnected and technology-driven world. So it's like a different type of company that is designed for the process of internationalization. That is seen since it's seen since the beginning as a potential company to be in process of internationalization. They're going to go through the process of internationalization in a faster way. And they often, within a few years, they're going to establish themselves abroad. This concept challenges the traditional Uppsala model, highlighting that not all companies follow a gradual approach or to internationalization. Not all the companies are made to go step by step and take time. Some others are born to go through the process of internationalization as soon as they can. The key features of this process, of this model, first of all, is the immediate global focus. Born global firms are designed from the outset to operate in international markets, and they often leverage technology and digital platforms to reach global customers quickly. As I was saying at the beginning, this digital globalization is, of course, the environment in the one so many companies are born to be global. So since the first moment that they considered the idea of this company, the internationalization process comes with the idea. So there is no other option. And of course, digital globalization and digital world is very important in the process of those companies. The second element is innovation and niche markets. These firms typically offer innovative products or services that cater to specific niche markets. The unique value proposition helps them stand out in the global marketplace. So as I was saying, those companies are born to be global. Of course, the process of innovation regards how they're going to look at those niche markets. So everything is in the process, of course, of the born on those firms. Use technology. Many born global firms utilize digital marketing, e-commerce, and social media to connect with international customers, bypassing traditional barriers to entry. So since the beginning, they have just this idea. So everything that they do goes to the process of internationalization. It's designed to go there. It's not a firm, a company that is built to offer the products or services just in their local or region, but the idea of them is to start maybe local, but everything that they do goes through the internationalization process. So the technology, the market, and everything that they're looking for, always they are going to directly look to the international market that they want to get into. Agility and flexibility. those firms tend to be smaller, more agile than traditional firms, allowing them to adapt quickly to changing market conditions and customers' needs. Of course, if we use technology, innovation, and we want to go to the international market, it's going to be a smaller company, not with the huge structure of the local companies, because it must be more easy to adapt to the changes and the challenges for the process of internationalization. Network relationships, of course, very important. They often rely on networks and partnerships to facilitate entry into foreign markets. This includes collaboration with local distributor suppliers or other businesses. So the idea, of course, in these companies is like these network relationships are very important because those are the basis to go through the process of internationalization and, of course, to find those partners and to get the contacts to the other market that we want to get into. So the implications, of course, in this case, it demonstrates that with the right resources, innovative products, and effective use of technology, companies can achieve international presence much more rapidly than traditional models would suggest. Of course, the risk that these born global firms are going to face is going to be higher compared with the Absalom model, which is going to go step by step. The born global firms, they just go straight forward the internationalization process with the use of different elements of the new trends, but of course, the risk is going to be high. Those models provide valuable insights into different paths of the internationalization, while the Uppsala model emphasizes a gradual experience-based approach. Born global firms highlight the potential for rapid internationalizations in today's interconnected and technology-driven world. Understanding these models helps business strategize their international expansion effectively based on their source, market conditions, and industry characteristics. So those are valid models to internationalize a company, but it depends on the type of risk that they want to, or that they consider they're able to face, and of course the objective that the company has and the size that they have. Do you have any question, any doubt so far? You've been very quiet tonight. Any doubt? Am I talking very fast? Or you're able to understand? Well, we're going to continue, and I hope that at the end you're going to have some questions. Now we go through the key steps in this internationalization process. First of all, we have the market research and selection. In this process, in this first step, we have to identify the market based on size, growth, and cultural fit. Those are some of the elements that we have to consider when we learn about the market. We have different tools. I think that through the program, you have been able to learn about the different resources that we have. But it's very important that when we talk about the market and the research that we have to do about this, we need to consider different elements. Maybe not only to think about how many customers, the potential customers that we may have, the trends of growth, but also the cultural fit. which is very important. We really need to understand the customer to be able to offer the product that they are asking for. In the cultural fit, we have different cases that we can share. And we have to think like the customer, but not the Colombian customer, but we have to be in the shoes of the customer in the other country that we want to go to. I have a very interesting example, which is about exporting Colombian mangoes to Germany. For us, for Colombians, a good mango to eat is the one that is like between yellow, red, and orange. It's quite soft, it's sweet, juicy. For us, that's like the perfect, I think, and for most of us. Well, maybe the people who prefer mango biche has different taste. But in general, when our mothers go to the supermarket and when they want to look for a good mango, they look for those characteristics. But it's different from the type of perfect mango for a German consumer. So there was this opportunity for Colombians to export mangoes to Germany. The quality of the product was good, so they had to start sending those mangoes. So they had the container, they send the mangoes, and when the mangoes arrived to the German port, they were notified of the problem. So according to the calculations about the time and the quality of the mango, the time in logistics and till the moment the mango would be on the supermarkets, it would be just perfect how the Colombians calculated. The problem is that when the mango arrived to Germany and start the whole process, of course, the quality of the mango at the end was the one that we Colombians enjoy having. But for them, this mature mango that we used to eat here, very juicy, sweet, for them is a bad mango. It's like too much. So for them, the best quality of the mango maybe is in the middle of not very sweet, not very soft, not very juicy. They consider that is just not good enough. So it's like some time before for them is the best point. At the end, the mangoes were not bad to eat for us, but for them they were. So they lose the first shipment. Those are very specific and simple elements of the culture that we have to understand. The profile, the cultural profile of the consumer is going to be very, very different from the one that we have. We cannot consider that the German is going to have the same taste on fruits as we do. So those elements are very important to consider. And from there now, there are so many different elements, like the levels of sweetness, of salt, of chili. It's going to change. It's going to be very different. For us, very spicy food is not really good, but it's going, the spicy feeling or sense is going to be different from a Colombian to a South Korean to a Mexican, because every culture has like different levels of spicy to be able to eat. So those are elements that we really need to know and learn about the culture and the market. That's a very important element on the market research and selection of the market that we have to face. The second step is the entry strategy development. Evaluating and choosing the right market entry strategy, example, exporting or franchising. So in this case, we need to know more about the law, the regulations, and which is the easiest way for us to get into the new market. If for us it's going to be exporting, okay. If the law allows us, if for us is the easiest way, just do it. If franchising is going to be better, we have to analyze the pros and cons and to decide which is the entry strategy that is going to be more useful and that is going to give us more success. So this is very important to analyze. And the third key element or step is the implementation and control, which talks about monitoring performance and adapting strategies as needed. So it's not just how I'm going to put the product or the service in the new market, how I'm going to be able to stay, to continue, and to have the business in that new market. So it's not just going to start to put the product, but only how am I going to maintain my product in this market. So sometimes, for example, implementation and control, sometimes we just think about the strategy, how am I going to get there? How is the consumer going to accept my product? But I have to analyze also, how am I going to continue in that market? How am I going to answer to the challenges that the market is going to present to me? How am I going to face those challenges? So it is very important to go through the implementation and control. Now we talk about the company internationalization and environment factors. There are some competitive advantages factors, such as resources, capabilities, and innovation. Those elements, resources, capabilities, and innovation, are characteristics of our company, our product, or our service. So those elements, those competitive advantages, factors, are going to give us this plus to get into that market. And it's going to be like the very differential elements that we're going to have to hold and also to continue and to go in a process of evolution to face the challenges that the market is going to put us in the process, in the way that we're going to go through. The external environment factors, which are those other elements that we have to consider, might be economical stability, political risks, cultural differences, and legal frameworks. Those external elements, we have to, of course, to learn a lot about them, because sometimes we have a really good knowledge of our company, a good knowledge of our product or service, and we're learning a lot about the consumer profile, but we're not considering those external factors that are going to be part of my process, opportunity of internationalization of the company, and that they're going to represent some challenges for me, for my company, or for the product, or for the process. The economic stability, we always have to know what are the trends of the economy in that country that are going to guarantee that I'm going to be able to continue getting utilities from the exercise. The political risk. In the case of Colombia, the political risk is being improving in the last 3 years, for example. So in this trend, so many companies are considered just to leave the country, to leave the investment that they had. So those elements are very important when a company is trying to go to the international market, because we have to face those challenges, and we have to analyze how are we going to react in those cases. Cultural differences are basic. for the success or failure of our process. And legal frameworks are going to be basic in the whole process because the legal regulations about not only the type of contracts are we going to sign or the alliances or strategies that we're going to develop, but also the regulations that the other markets have for the imports of the type of products that we're going to consider to export or the type of business that we're going to develop. So it's very important to consider the interior elements, like the competitive advantage factors that are owned by my company, by my product, and also the external environment factors, which I'm not going to be able to change them. I just have to adapt or to decide if those factors are going to be good environment for the process that I want to face, or if those factors are going to mean a higher risk for the opportunity that I'm considering to take. So it's very important for us to be good, to have a good knowledge about those external environment factors. There is a case study that I want to share with you. This is the case of Starbucks. I think that most of you know about this international brand, Starbucks. Starbucks expanded its presence internationally. You know, it's everywhere. It faced varying cultural preferences and consumer behaviors in different markets. As Starbucks is in many places, of course, they have to adapt the product and the design of the business everywhere they go. For example, there is one case on the menu customization. Starbucks tailors its menu to local tastes. In the case of China, for example, the company introduced beverages like matcha latte and offered a range of teas, acknowledging the local tea drinking culture. If you go to Starbucks here in Colombia, the main portfolio is about coffee. And if you want some tea, of course, you have alternatives, you have options, but you don't have many of them. Why? Because our market is more a coffee market and not a tea market. The most consumers that we have is coffee, not tea. Of course, some people drink tea, but not everyone. So it's more attractive coffee in a Starbucks in Colombia than coffee in China, where even if they drink a lot of coffee, they mainly go for tea in so many different ways. In the case of Mexico, they serve drinks like café de olla to appeal to local flavors. So also the names, they change. Of course, here in Colombia, you go for a café campesino, you're not going to find it in New York or anywhere else because it has different characteristics. And those characteristics are preferred here in Colombia than in other places in the world. The second element is the store design and experiences. Not all Starbucks are exactly the same here and in Timbuktu. Those are different. Starbucks designs its stores to reflect the local culture and architecture. In the case of Italy, for instance, the company creates upscale reserve roasteries that emphasize craftsmanship, blending in with the local coffee culture rather than simply replicating its American store format. If you see the architecture from Italy to the United States, it's going to be so different. And of course, they like more the traditional architecture and like the cozy environments to go for a coffee. So that changes from the United States to Italy, for example. Community engagement. The company actively engages with local communities through initiatives like supporting local farmers and sourcing ingredients locally when possible. This fosters goodwill and enhances its brand image. In the case of this community engagement, if we see in different places, they have like a special image how they support the local farmers. In the case of Colombia, they show like the Colombian coffee, and also they support a lot of coffee productions in Africa. So it depends in the place of the world that you are, that they're going to show this cultural and community engagement that they have, like this social impact that they have also, not just the business, but how they influentiate or support the local producers from the country, or in some places, maybe in Europe, when they're more driven to helping the Africans in the production of those poor countries. So those elements of supporting Ethiopian production of coffee is going to be very well seen in Europe, for example. Cultural sensitivity, sorry, in regions where coffee culture is deeply ingrained, like in Italy, Starbucks emphasizes quality and experience over just fast service. So this approach helps them align with local customers' expectations. In the case of the United States, the people prefers like the high, huge coffees, maybe not very strong, more light, and different characteristics. And maybe if you go to Italy or a European country, they prefer like the small but very concentrated coffee with different characteristics. So it depends on the type of market. They're going to adapt the menu, in this case of Starbucks. Another element, for example, in that happened with the Starbucks in Saudi Arabia, is that, as you know, the image of the Starbucks is the image of a woman. Everything is green, but it's an image of a woman. In Starbucks in Saudi Arabia, they had to change that image because it's not allowed to use the image of women in marketing. So they had to change the image. So those are elements that we have to consider always when we go to a new market. I would like to know if any of you have any case to share. Maybe, Professor, do you have any similar case to share with our students, or another student has found a very interesting case that wants to share?
Yeah, sure. I have one that I actually lived by myself when I was a bachelor student. I was doing my practices in an Austrian company just below Germany, that it was dedicated to solar energy production and all of the components in the photovoltaic systems. And by the time I was there, I was doing a marketing research for Latin America and the Caribbean. And one of the conclusions, one of the main results were that we needed to adapt some of the components because solar efficiency here in Latin America is way higher than in Europe. So they were not prepared. And when they actually went to Spain, that is quite similar to Middle Europe, some of the components were burned in the process because they weren't prepared for such capacity. So of course, adapting is super important for companies if you want to go international or global. That's my case, Professor.
Thank you very much. It's a very important case nowadays because the solar energy is like the trend nowadays, and we have to face that is not the same, the solar capacity that countries from near the equator have, compared maybe with northern countries or southern countries. And those are elements that are going to be very important in the process of marketing of any product regarding the solar energy. Thank you very much. Any of our students have any case to share with us tonight? You're very shy tonight. I hope that next time you're going to be more open. Well, now we have the role of diplomacy. We were talking about that in the last activity, the role of diplomacy in opening markets, the impact on the market access. So it's very important because we need to know how governments, relations, and international diplomacy can facilitate trade. In the case of international trade agreements, the type of bilateral, multilateral, and regional, those international trade agreements bring different benefits like tariff reductions, enhanced market access, and regulatory cooperation. So sometimes we are critics of those trade agreements. Maybe we should learn more about what the trade agreements have and to find out that the problem are not the trade agreements, are the people and the ways that we used to have to negotiate those international trade agreements. Sometimes we are not well prepared as negotiators, so we accept, we say yes to everything, and then we have the troubles to face them. So diplomacy is very important, and that's why today so many countries, most of the countries of the world, they have to sign international trade agreements to have more benefits, to bring more benefits to the companies, to have access to the international market. Those trade agreements also impact in the way that they ease in barriers to entry. They provide legal protections and foster innovation. They align the company strategies with trade policies for competitive advantages. Those tiny elements are designed by the negotiators, and that's why those negotiators, they should be very well prepared to know how its local market and production works and what's the opportunity that we have to take from the other markets and how are we going to write those trade agreements. So we have different strategies in this diplomacy, and some of them that are important in the process of having access to those new markets are, for example, trade missions that our governments used to have, processes of negotiations, of course, about exact specific topics in economical sectors, to build relationships with foreign markets, which is very important. Those are like building bridges between countries to communicate and to facilitate the international market. So those the diplomacy is very important because diplomats, they have been studied its whole life about the international relations, the different cultures, and some people are specialized on regions. So when we talk about diplomacy and people who has been working on this for years are people who know more about the profile of the cultures in different places over the world. And those are the opportunities that we have to open the business opportunities for our companies. Government relations and international diplomacy, they play crucial roles in facilitating this trade by creating an environment that promotes economic cooperation, reduces barriers, and fosters mutual benefits. So it's very important, the role of diplomacy, because they are like those intermediaries that we have and the people that is been working and learning about the other countries and how to negotiate and how to manage relationships, and those are going to help us in the process of internationalization. But also we have some challenges in the process of internationalization, many challenges in every single element. Some common obstacles are the cultural misunderstandings. the legal complexities and the economic fluctuations. These cultural misunderstandings, as I was telling you about the different examples, are very common. But also those are elements that tell us and teach us that we really need to learn about the other culture and to respect the other culture. We cannot pretend that our culture is better and that we are that we know how to live in a better way. We need to respect and understand how the others live and decide to live. The legal complexities, every country is a different world. Sorry. And of course, because it's a different world, they have different regulations. So we have to learn about the legal complexities of every single world, every single country. And of course, the economic fluctuations. If we talk about international business, the economy is the basic of everything. So if we're going to try to get into an economic that is very unstable, it's not safe for us because the risk that we're going to face is very high. So we really need to find an economy, a very stable economy that is going to help us to get utilities and to go through the market without any troubles. We're going to have challenges, but it's going to be a lower risk. Mitigation of strategies, developing cultural intelligence, legal preparedness, and risk management plans are very important to face different obstacles. And the future trends, they regard the digital transformation, the rise of e-commerce and digital marketing, and the growing consumer demand for responsible practices. So the digital transformation and the evolution of the commerce, it's continuing. The commerce is not static. The economy is not static. The culture is not static. The society is not static. Everything is changing and a process of evolution. So we always have to adapt. We really need to be able to adapt to the challenges, the changes in economy, the trends of marketing, the trends of digital evolution, the innovation, the trends of innovation, which are the ways that innovation is taking. So where are we going? How are we going to use those tools to make us more efficient, to make us more competitive, and to have a special place in the world market? And the growing consumer demand, of course, because we depend as producers and owners of companies and sellers of products or services, we depend on the consumer and the demand of the consumer and the needs of the consumer. If we don't analyze that, we're going to fail in our process. So we always need to be aware of the trends and of course, not being behind of those trends. Well, that's for now. I would like to know if you have any questions or if you have had any trouble with the activity, if you had any doubts about what we were talking about. As I told you, you've been very quiet tonight. I would like to hear some of you. Jefferson, good night. Are you connected, Jefferson?
Good night.
How are you doing, Jefferson? Did you understand what I was talking about? It was interesting for you?
Yes, I'm sorry I entered late. I was working, so I need to watch the recording.
Okay, thank you very much, Jefferson. I'm asking you because this is the second course that you take with me. So I feel familiar with you. So that's why I was asking you. Maybe the other student was scared that I was asking everyone and then just leave the meeting. I want to invite you. I know that it sometimes it's not easy for us to participate, to share our ideas. Um, I think that I sometimes I speak too fast. Um, but if you have doubts, if there is something that you don't understand, just feel free to ask. Feel free to use the chat, say anything. The idea of this time with you is just to share ideas, to answer the doubts that you have, um, to give you information that is going to be useful in the process of the course, and of course, for you as professionals on international business. I know that the English level, sometimes is not very high, or maybe it's just that you don't feel that comfortable trying to speak. But I invite you to try, just to say hello, just try to build a sentence and say something, because the truth is that that's the only way that we can improve the skills that we have in English. If we don't practice, if we don't try to speak and to say something to the other one, that's going to be very difficult. Maybe we can understand when we hear, when we read, we can understand, but the trouble is going to be the communication, to say something to someone. So I invite you to take those small moments that we have, that is just 3 moments, 3 web conference that we have, just to share your ideas, to ask anything that you want. If you don't want to say aloud, just write on the chat and we're going to give you answer, okay? I always repeat, remember that this course is 100% in English. I'm not going to talk to you in Spanish because you have the rest of the courses in Spanish. But I invite you to participate, to use the different tools that we have today. Before, maybe in the case when the teacher Javier was a student at the university, or in my case, we didn't have artificial intelligence to help us with those jobs. But today we have, and we have to use it in a good way. We have to use it for our good, and of course also to improve the skills that we have in the language, and of course in the knowledge of international business. So I don't know if Professor Javier wants to share something, or if we just finishing here.
Yes, Professor Anja, thank you. Thank you for the topic. It was really, really interesting. Just a couple of things. You guys, you have to take advantage of these spaces. You have to practice. You know, the only way you can speak English fluently is by speaking, making mistakes. That is completely normal. This is a safe space. No one is laughing at you. Everyone is supporting you. So please take this opportunity, because in all of the professions, English is important. But in this particular one, English is super, super important for you getting better opportunities in the future. So please feel free to reach me as well, uh, with Teams or whatever, or using the campus. But please try to develop your English skills, because you will thank us later when you have a really, really good job. Thank you, Professor Angela, for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Professor Javier. As you were saying, it's very important for you to practice. It's the only way. It's the only way. And in these type of programs, which are international, the basic language that we have to use is English. If you learn another, it's a plus, and it's welcome, and it's very important in this globalized world, but English is the basic one. So feel free to make mistakes. We're not going to judge you. It's just an opportunity to improve and to practice. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight. You're welcome to participate in your CPAS. Professor Javier is going to develop CPAS and I'm going to do it too. So you're welcome to participate, to ask questions that you have about the activity, and just reach us on Teams and through the institutional channels of communication that we have. Feel free to contact us. Good night to everyone and thank you for being here. Night night.